and welcome to Square Raindrop with a sudden stratospheric warming special. Hey, Steph.
Oh, that's easy to say, isn't it? I think I'll call it SSW.
I think you're very wise. And we're kind of tuning in on this a little bit at the moment, aren't we? Because it definitely did happen in the middle of February. And all we're really concerned about now is what impact it's going to have. But it's all very well talking about it. What exactly is it? I believe you've got all the information.
Well, I've got some of the information. Now, you see what happens in the winter, in the poles, the North Pole, it gets really cold. It doesn't get any sun, it's always dark. So it gets super, super cold and the air starts whizzing around and around and it kind of forms this little donut. And that's a donut of really cold air. And you've heard about that because that's the polar vortex that I have really struggled to say with a very British accent because I can't. In my head, it's always an American accent. But when I try and say it, I offend all Americans for a very, very large area. So anyway, so the polar vortex is a little donut of very cold air up in the north. And if it's strong and if it's whizzing around really quickly, that means all the air sort of goes up to the top, a little bit like a ballerina spinning around. If she pushes herself in, she goes, and then all the cold air gets dragged to the top. So that's when we get lots of sort of wet weather up in the northern parts of Europe and all the cold air stays up there. But when it kind of is really weak and kind of a little bit, then it all comes further south and we get the wetter weather over the southern parts of Europe. And often people like Scandinavia and the UK, we get very cold air. We get really a much colder winter. So that's generally how the polar vortex works. But sometimes something happens, like the waves that just generally go around the Earth. Sometimes they crash over the top of the polar vortex and they disrupt the whole thing. And that is what's called a sudden stratospheric warming, because this crash of air over the top will suddenly warm that part of the polar vortex. And then it will sort of push everything downwards. And that sort of transfers the air further down towards the Earth. That compresses it because there's more air down here, squashes it all together, and that warms it up. And then that warmth sort of transfers down towards the Earth. So that's how come the warming sort of transfers elsewhere. So that's, in a nutshell, very simply, what the sudden stratospheric warming is. But what does that mean for us, Jo?
Well, it can disrupt the jet stream, of course. And when it does, it can reverse everything. So instead of having the prevailing westerly winds that we usually do in this country, or southwesterly winds that we usually do, it all starts going backwards. And not only do most meteorologists not like things going from east to west, the computers don't like it either. And they try really, really hard to stop that happening, which makes weather coming from the east really quite difficult to forecast. So we got so far with this in so much as high pressure established itself over the weekend, right over the country, but it's not far enough east to really bring in any very cold air at the moment. It's coldish and it's very flat. It's a cloudy high as well. So we're seeing large amounts of cloud, largely dry conditions where the sky's clear for any length of time. Yeah, overnight we're seeing some frost and things, but it's nothing dramatic. It's not the beast from the east that we saw in 2018.
No, but it's also not a, here it is, and now it's finished. It's not like a front coming through where you see the rain come and then the rain goes. This kind of has this rippling effect that can happen a lot later. So the actual sudden stratospheric warming, as you said, that happened sort of mid-February, but the knock-on effect can happen anything up to a month later.
So we've still got quite a while to go. And that's good news because I remember that you and I have a bet on here.
Yes.
So not every stratospheric warming results in very cold weather, just some of them. So herein lies the bet. I think it's going to give us a spell of very cold weather, and you don't think so?
I don't think it's going to be anything like the beast from the east. Tell us about the beast from the east, Jo. You had a bit of a hairy time of it. I was in the Middle East, so I missed the whole thing.
Well, you did. I was going to say, how dare you compare, because you weren't here at the time. Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, you know, looking back through the mist of time, I've been involved with the weather since Pussy was a kitten, definitely. And I've never actually seen conditions like this. And this may be because they were peculiar to Lincolnshire and the terrain here, but fundamentally, we had snow, lovely snow day. Kids were off school, went for a cracking walk in the park. The snow was kind of to the top of your wellies. It was that kind of depth. But, and I did know this, it was a particular type of snow, a very dry type of snow that we don't usually see. So, I mean, we have a formula, don't we, in terms of converting what would be rainfall into snowfall. And so we can roughly say there'll be 3 to 5 centimetres, or there'll be 15 centimetres over the high ground. Well, this was a snow that you couldn't actually calculate with that kind of formula because it was different. And so anyway, the snow fell, had a lovely snow day, walked around, sun came out, and I thought, right, I'm going to go to town to go and get some batteries, because obviously it's very pressing to get these things sometimes. And within a minute, there was a scream, and all the snow off the fields was picked up and blown onto the road, and I was in a snowdrift. I mean, these drifts eventually measured, 6-10 foot high, and the farmers were people out with tractors. I think there were about 50 cars stuck on that stretch of road overnight. It was really quite unbelievable, and I genuinely was concerned that I would get out of it. So yes, I'm quite sensitive to a beast from the east. I'm thinking, no, I don't want that to happen again, or if I do, I'm going to make sure I'm inside my house and I'm not going anywhere.
I bet when the farmer pulled you out with his tractor, you didn't tell him what you did for a living. I bet you kept that one to yourself.
I didn't. Well, like I say, the squall from the wind was too noisy. And why I say it was peculiar to Lincolnshire is because obviously Lincolnshire is very flat. Well, I say obviously. For those that don't know, Lincolnshire is very flat. And that particular stretch of road, there's no hedge or anything. So as that wind blew and literally picked up this very light snow and dumped it on the road, there was nothing to stop it. Nothing to stop it at all. So, I mean, it was quite peculiar to that stretch of road, to the terrain here. But I mean, driving back from Lincoln to home on a back road about a week later, because this stuff didn't go away, the snowdrifts was still, way above the roof of my car. Really extra. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, we didn't in the Middle East see anything like it at all. So I wish. Do you have any photos?
No, actually, I do have the day. Do you know what? I'll dig one out.
That's what we need. We need some photos.
I know. I will dig one out for sure, for sure. So in terms of the long-term forecast, of course, that high pressure just seems to be sitting there and sitting there. Eventually, it's got to go one of two ways. It's got to go east, or it's got to go back towards the west. And what are the ramifications of that?
Well, it could just see. I remember getting my gig at Sky News, and John Riley said, "Tell me about high pressure, Steph," or something along those lines. And I said, "Well, high pressures are big flabby things. They don't like to move anywhere in a great hurry." And I stand by that to this day. So this thing sits there. It can either fill and then just kind of dissipate, or it's got to move somewhere. If it heads off sort of eastwards, then it will drag across a load of air from across Europe that may come under the high towards us. But if it goes any other way, then what it does is totally different. So it's quite particular, the conditions we need to get this beast from the east. And I don't think we're going to get one. Not like
that. Well, opportunity at this stage still to change bets, but I'm going to stay with the cold. I think we will see some snowfall out of this. And furthermore, at this stage, I won't quite say the Met Office agrees with me, because, they obviously use a lot of comparatives, but they seem to be inclining that way as well, that we could see some snowfall in a week or so.
I'm not saying no snow. I just want to make that clear. I'm not saying no snow. I'm just saying I'm not thinking we're going to get snowdrifts taller than your car. That's my measurement. That's my ballpark.
Okay, I'll go with that. I'll go with that. But yes, certainly, because of course, 1st of March is the first day of meteorological spring, isn't it?
But you're forgetting the other very important weather day that's tomorrow. Do you know what that is? It's actually the biggest day in the meteorological calendar.
Is it? Why?
It's my birthday.
Oh, congratulations, another year completed. What can I say?
21 again.
Birthday.
Amazing.
And how will you be celebrating?
I'm going to take my little kiddies for the first time in an Indian restaurant. They've never been. They love curry.
Do they eat Indian food? Well, no, that's a starter. Oh, how lovely. Well, that's a fantastic thing to do. Well, congratulations, happy birthday, and have an absolutely fabulous day. And of course, wrap up warm just in case it turns a little bit chilly.
Just in case I get stuck in one of those snowdrifts.
Well, this time next week, we should be clearer still on exactly what's going to happen with this SSW. Doubtless you know more about it now than when we started chatting. Steffi, thank you so much. And for the time being, ta-ra from a square raindrop. And if you want to contact us, it is...
Square raindrop. Why? Because
it didn't fit.
Didn't fit.